Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our seminar this evening on advisor training. My name is Holly Haig, and I am our advising and events manager here at the US Fulbright Commission. Just to kind of introduce myself a little bit, I pursued my undergraduate degree in the US and have recently just graduated this summer. I'm joined here with my colleague Andrea.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea. I am an educational advisor here at the US-UK Fulbright Commission, and I also studied in the US. I did a study abroad, and I spent one academic year in the US.
Great. And so just to give you a bit of a rundown on what to expect from our webinar this evening, throughout we're going to be covering a range of different topics, from the key differences between the UK and the US higher education system to the admissions timeline, choosing a university and accessing funding. And then in the second half, we're going to move more into what completing an application looks like and the role of school advisors. Just a quick note, if you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please don't hesitate to put a little note in the question and answer section, but we are going to have a section for question and answers at the end, so we encourage you to save those questions until then, pop them in the question and answer or Q&A box as opposed to the chat. That will be brilliant. So just before we get started, we would like to introduce a little bit about the Fulbright Commission and the work that we do here. So the Fulbright Commission was founded about 70 years ago, just after the Second World War, and its aim was to really prevent a Third World War, and it was thought that by Senator Fulbright, our founder, that the best way to do so was through promoting intercultural exchange and understanding. And so we are a non-for-profit organisation that's funded jointly by the US and the UK government. And our main aim is to promote peace and cultural understanding through educational exchange. And so what are the ways in which we do this? So here at the Fulbright Commission, one of the sort of parts of this that we work on is through the EducationUSA services. And so we offer free unbiased advice to help UK students apply to the US. And we also help US universities to kind of interpret UK qualifications. So it's kind of that two-way relationship. We are the part of a network of 600 advisors in 400 centres around the world, and we are the official source of educational advising here in the UK for US higher education pursuits. So if it is your dream or one of your students' dreams to study in the US, we are here to help. So I'm going to dive right in and talk a little bit more about what makes studying in the US different from studying in the UK. One of the key differences is the fact that in the UK, whereas you would mostly be looking, especially in England and Wales, at studying a 3-year course, in the US, you're looking to do a 4-year undergraduate degree. You're also, when studying in the US, looking to have a lot more freedom, because we are talking about the US after all. You're going to see a lot more flexibility built into those 4 years, and there is a lot more focus on what we call a liberal arts approach. And so you'd often be choosing your major or your major area of study during your second year of study. So your first year would be a lot more flexible to study a wide range of courses, and then you'd be looking to narrow your focus or your lens of study going into your second year. And so you'll find that when you're applying to US universities, students will be applying to the college or university as a whole rather than to a specific department, which is quite a big difference from here in the UK. You'll also find, with having a little bit more of a broader education system, that universities' personalities or vibe comes into the application process and the sort of campus life itself. So that is something to factor into the university process. And again, with having this sense of freedom, there's no set way of doing things across universities. This includes the application process. You're not going to find a centralized system such as UCAS that all universities use. Admissions is going to differ from university to university. It's not just a set of sort of entry requirements in the same way that we have here in the UK. And also things like application fees and actual fees when you're at the university will differ significantly from institution to institution. The next sort of key difference is this idea of holistic approach to education, which I kind of touched on the previous slide. And so there's a real focus on you learning outside of the classroom just as much as there is inside of the classroom. And this real sense of sort of well-roundedness becomes really apparent, not only in the application process to a US university, but also how sort of US degrees work as a whole. Admission is not just about your grades. Admissions and applications will also take into account your school and sort of your context within your school. It'll take into account things like your extracurricular pursuits, your family life, and you'll find as we get further into the presentation some of the ways in which this is encouraged through the application process. And we always talk at the Fulbright Commission about this idea of fit and how fit is key to admission. And so what we mean by this is how you fit into the university and what the university is looking for, and likewise how the university will fit into what you're looking for. So we're really looking at, again, the whole vision of you. The personality of the university becomes important in that. And if you are a student, or you have a student who is looking to secure funding to make their US education possible, that is going to factor into this idea of fit. A university that does not offer financial aid to international students might not be a good fit for a student who is in need of financial aid or scholarship funding to make that education possible. I'm now going to briefly talk about the admissions process and a small timeline of what you should really expect throughout this process. Unlike UCAS, where it's one application through a centralized body that teachers tend to be familiar with, there's a lot more moving parts that play into this process, and I want to make sure that that is quite clear. So the main sort of starting point that we recommend students begin with is research, and this takes place usually sort of 1 year to 18 months in advance of when the student would be expected to enroll. So you're usually looking sort of end of year 12 or equivalent for this process to begin. Then it would be a case of registering for any admissions exams that the universities the student is looking at may require. Note that not all universities will require an ACT or an SAT exam, and so that's very much individualized based on where the student would like to apply. Moving into the sort of autumn of your final year of studies, this is when students would be engaging with admissions officers, expressing their interest, emailing, asking questions, that type of thing. Again, this idea of communication and expressing your interest is a much more American process, not one that we usually see to the same extent here in the UK. Again, in the autumn, you'd carry on to put together your application and ultimately submit that. It's at this point of the year that the school will become really important in submitting the school documents, which Andrea will talk about in a little bit. Again, going into sort of November, December, you may be interviewed by an alum of the college. Now, these interviews, again, are very different from what we typically expect in a UK context. These will be more general, and it will be an assessment of the student's fit. It'll be a more casual setting, usually a conversation in a coffee shop or via Skype. And it will be really getting that idea of how the student is, taking that holistic look at them as a whole. Going into sort of late autumn, and then if you apply sort of in the regular round, this will be going into the spring of your final year of university. Your application will be read by admissions officers at universities. They will then be taken into admissions committee, and who will decide and debate your application, and decisions will be released. So I now want to talk about that first sort of key step in the application process, which is choosing and researching a university. The reason this is such a key part of the process is because in the US, there are over 4,500 universities as compared to 120 here in the UK, which is quite a difference. And so going back to this idea of freedom, you'll find that there is a lot of variation across institutions, and it allows for universities to really have that defined idea of personality and appeal to a certain type of student. And so a great advantage of this for UK students who are applying to US universities is that they can really find their niche, find something that they are passionate about and would like to pursue at a university, and really delve into that specifically. So I'm going to cover a few different types of universities that students might be able to apply for. This is not an exhaustive list, this is just 3, but just to kind of give you a sense of what that looks like in the US system. So first we have liberal arts colleges. Again, liberal arts colleges tend to be quite small. They'll have, this particular one is called Middlebury College, and it's in Vermont. It has about 2,500 students. So again, close-knit community, real focus on teaching excellence. You'll see lots of small class sizes and a lot of opportunities for students to pursue research opportunities, especially with it only really being a college for undergraduates. The next picture is a picture of the University of Colorado Boulder. This is a public research institution. So as the name might suggest, there is a big focus on research opportunities, and that'll be at the forefront of what a lot of the work at this institution covers. Again, a 4-year institution and another type of university, as opposed to the sort of privately funded liberal arts college on the left. Finally, we have a picture of Lane Community College, which is in Oregon. And a community college is another type of institution that students may consider. At a community college, students can pursue what are called an associate degree, which is not something that is necessarily offered or sort of we have an equivalent for here in the UK. An associate's degree is a 2-year degree, which is often vocational or leads to a specific profession. But what community colleges can do is allow students a sort of 2-year stepping stone where they can find their feet after pursuing their A-levels or BTEC qualifications. In particular, this is a great option for BTEC students. And what the community colleges have is connections to 4-year institutions. So once the 2 years at the community college is complete, students can then transfer that qualification to do their 3rd and 4th year at a 4-year institution and receive their undergraduate degree from that 4-year institution. So again, that's an overview of some of the different types of universities that there are in the US. Again, there's over 4,500, so it's by no means an exhaustive list, but it kind of gives you that sense of what's out there. So with such a variety on offer, we want to kind of touch on a resource that might be of use to some of your students called the BigFuture College Search. And so we're just going to take you through to the website here. I hope you can all see. So BigFuture College Search is a way to kind of narrow down that pool rather than having 4,500 universities. You know, it says here 3,734 are on this website, and you can actually go in down this tab here and narrow down that search according to what your student is looking for. So let's just run through an example really quickly. So if we go through type of school and we input 4-year college or university, again, we already see that that result is narrowed down. We're going to go into location. And let's say the student is looking to study in Ohio. Okay, so we can filter for that. And let's say that funding is a concern for your student. We would go down here and you can actually select international students, financial aid available for international students. And close and see results. We see already that that result has been narrowed down to 72 results from over 3,500. And then from here, you can go in and actually select the universities. So let's go to Denison University. Just 1 second. Great. So straight away, we get a sense of the university. We see that it's a medium-sized 4-year private liberal arts college. We get a sense of when some of the deadlines are, because of course, with it being such a free system, each university can determine when their deadlines are, how much their cost of tuition is. And so you really get a sense of some of those features of the university. And again, we can link off to the university website. And again, suggested universities to look into based on that college. So that's just an idea of one resource that might be of use to you. We're now going to talk a little bit more about affording US universities, because I think just there can be a sort of off-putting sort of big sticker price that students see. And whilst this may not necessarily be the role of the direct role of an advisor, it's useful to have on your radar if you do have students who are considering studying in the US for whom funding may be a concern. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the sources of funding. Unlike here in the UK, there is not such a focus on government funding as a means to fund your higher education. Instead, in the US, higher education is very much seen as a privilege that is paid for and sort of contributed to by your family and your personal funds. And so that is going to be seen to factor into a lot of the costs of attendance at many universities in the US. The universities themselves are also another source of funding that you'll see a lot, and especially when you're going and using resources like BigFuture College Search, you want to be, if funding is a concern, making sure that that tab for financial aid available to international students is ticked. And there are 2 main types of funding that you'll often see coming from universities. One is called a merit-based scholarship, which is scholarships that are based on a particular merit that your student has achieved. So it might be that they have an excellent A-level result in physics, and that university has a physics prize for blah, 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 whatever the particular physics prize is. And so students may access a particular scholarship for a merit-based activity or achievement. The other type of financial aid that universities often offer is what's called need-based financial aid, which will factor in your family's ability to contribute towards your education. And it's possible then that the university will factor in grants to cover some of that cost of attendance. Another source of funding are what we call external funding bodies. These might be particular organisations which have a vested interest in a particular set of attributes. So for example, if you are a woman of colour from Wales who's interested in engineering, there might be an external funding body for that identity. Another funding body that we have seen students access before is called the Moorhead Keynes Scholarship. this is a scholarship at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, covers all 4 years of attendance, including 3 fully funded summers, and even flights to and from the university. So again, these opportunities are available, and we do encourage students to really do their research when it comes to funding. As a final resort, there is the opportunity to have a loan. This is a bit complicated because your UK sort of student loan would not transfer to the US. And so unless you have sort of a close family member or a co-signer in the US, loans are something we typically advise students not to go down that route and to focus on a combination of the top 3 sources of funding. When I was studying in the US, I had a need-based financial aid package from my university, and then had some family and personal contributions that went towards that degree. So we're now going to talk about completing an application and what that is going to look like as you apply to US universities. Just very briefly, some of the things that are going to make you stand out as an applicant to US universities include your academics, your academic fit, so how you stand up against other applicants or the average applicant, which a lot of universities will put on their university website. Your extracurriculars, so what it is you do in your free time when you're not in school, as well as your personal attributes, which is something that you're really going to be able to express through the application process. So again, this idea of a holistic approach at looking at applicants is so important in the US system. They're not just saying, okay, we'd like to see an A star and 2 A's in this subject and this subject. They are looking at your academics alongside who you are as a person, what it is that excites you and interests you, and what you have to offer to their campus. So what does this kind of look like on paper? Here we have a list of some of the key components of an application. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see what it is that a student typically will be in charge of submitting. And on the right-hand side, you'll see what it is that the school will compile. So just very briefly to run through what the student is expected to complete, usually an application form, which will include things like demographic information, family, address, contact information, that kind of thing. As I mentioned earlier, if the institutions that a student is applying to need SAT or ACT test scores, then they would submit those admissions exam scores. They'll submit an extracurricular list, which will be up to 10 different activities that they participate in, which could be anything from a sport to babysitting, or being head girl or head boy at their school. They will also submit an application fee, but if this is an issue that may involve the school, we can talk about that in the Q&A. And then they'll also submit 2 to 3 essays. It could be more than this, but that's sort of what we see as the average among students who are applying to university in the US. One of these essays will be sort of a personal essay, and that will kind of be the equivalent of a personal statement through UCAS, but it will take place in a completely different way and will be a lot more personal to the student, as opposed to focused on a particular passion for a subject. And then they'll have usually sort of 2 to 3 supplementary essays which go along with that, and they'll be specific to the university. On the school side, we have a transcript, 2 to 3 recommendation letters, and a school profile, which Andrea is going to talk a little bit more about in a bit more depth in a moment. So just want to flag as well that in the US, as we've mentioned, with there being a lot more flexibility for universities to kind of set their own processes for admission. There is no sort of equivalent system or platform to UCAS. However, there does exist a platform called the Common Application, or Common App, and over 900 universities use this platform as their application platform. Couple of differences with UCAS is that not all universities will receive the same essays through this app, but the sort of broad idea of it is similar to UCAS in that students will submit certain documents and advisors will submit certain documents through the Common Application. If your student is using the Common Application for any of their applications, we do have some guidance specifically to the Common App on our website, which you can definitely go and have a look through in more detail. It's also worth noting that even if the universities that your students are applying for aren't using the Common App, often the questions that are asked on their individual application processes or platforms will be broadly quite similar. And so it's worth kind of being familiar with those platforms. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an example. I've mentioned some of the documents that students will be expected to kind of be uploading to illustrate this difference between the US and the UK before Andrea gets into what the school side of things looks like. So I'm going to share with you a couple of the essay prompts that the University of Chicago has used in the past couple of years. For those of you who don't know, the University of Chicago is a very prestigious research university in Chicago, as the name would suggest. And so, yeah, just to give you an idea, one of their questions recently was find X. So alongside that personal essay, students would have to answer find X with no sort of context. The university is known for its sort of quirkiness and comedic take on things. So you can definitely see that students would be prompted to have very creative responses. Apparently there were students who were drawing treasure maps and figuring out where X was. There were also students doing big, long, complicated mathematical equations to find X. And so it really gives students the opportunity to express themselves, what interests them, and how they would fit into the kind of vibe of the campus. Similarly, what's so odd about odd numbers? Again, quite out there, quite wacky, but illustrates again this idea of personality and fit that students are illustrating in their application process. And to give you an idea that this is not the same type of application that students will be submitting through the UCAS UK system. So I'm going to hand over to Andrea now, who's going to talk a little bit more in depth about what school documents, sort of the role of the school and what school documents schools will be expected to produce in this process.
Thank you, Holly. So the role of the school, school representatives play a crucial role in the success of students with their US admissions applications. That's because when students apply to a US university, if they're applying especially to highly competitive universities and applying for financial aid, the university will be receiving a high number of academically excellent applications as well. However, if their school provides context and on where the student comes from, what the school is like, and through recommendation letters, which detail the nature and qualities of the student, the school representatives can really help their students shine in their applicant pool. Schools will need to submit a whole range of documents, and they vary depending on whether the student applies to the Common App, or if the university doesn't require the Common App, if they apply independently. But it's very important that the schools submit all of these documents, because US universities will not review an application until all of these forms have been submitted. So we encourage the students to choose 1 counselor and 2 teachers to support their application. So there's a little bit of a difference between the teacher and the counselor, and the counselor cannot be a teacher and vice versa. So the counselor, we recommend senior administrator. We say head of careers, head of sixth form, head of pastoral care or form tutor can serve as a counselor. And the counselor will write a recommendation letter that provides sort of bird's eye view or an overall evaluation of the student relative to their peers in their school. And this representative will also be responsible for the school profile, the school report, and the transcript. And then teacher, so we recommend that 2 A-level or higher teachers complete their teacher recommendations with at least one teacher from the student's subject area of interest. The letters provided by the teachers will focus specifically on the student's success within the classroom and the student's academic potential. So, recommendation letters. Recommendation letters are a crucial part of US university applications and can really help bring the student's application to life. So US universities generally require the student to submit 1 recommendation letter from a counselor and 2 letters from 2 teachers. And what is a US university looking for in a recommendation letter? So collectively, the letter should reinforce how the student meets the university holistic admissions criteria, including academic performance and potential, extracurriculars, leadership ability, character, etc. Recommendation letter should show the context of the student's accomplishments and should be supported with anecdotal evidence to tell the story of that student. Just a reminder that this is a marketing tool for applicants. So if you're going to be writing a recommendation letter for a student, make sure that it is a student that knows you well or that you know real well. Make sure that you meet with them and that you discuss sort of what you can write about, and if they have anecdotes that they think that could be useful for you to include in your letter, then please do get those from the students. It will be really valuable. And remember that when you're writing a recommendation letter, whether you're a counselor or a teacher, remember to write enthusiastically. Don't have any British reserve, because the student will be going up against domestic students in the US, and their teachers and advisors who will be writing their recommendations letters will be really enthusiastic about their application. So you just want to make sure that you're matching that tone as well. So there's a difference between the counselor and the teacher recommendation letters. So the counselor, like the image suggests here, is similar to floodlights. It provides context and information on the student's academic record, extracurricular and community achievements, as well as character and personality. They provide a broader overview of the student within the school context. In a US school, counselors would write a letter for each student they advise, comparing and contrasting their achievements and character to others in the year group. So this is, like we said, bird's eye view, overall context. And then the teacher, the letter of recommendation that teachers will write, it's more akin to a spotlight. Provide information on the student's skills within the classroom. Teachers should provide specific examples of the student's ability to succeed academically, highlighting the student's unique characteristics, thought process, and contributions to the classroom. And letters, like we said, should be written by 2 A-level, IB, or higher teachers. And like we mentioned, should be at least from one of the teachers from the student's subject area of interest. If you need more information or you want to find out more tips about how you can write recommendation letters, if you're a counselor or a teacher, you can head on to our website and we have more examples in there. So transcripts. This is something that the counselors will be submitting. So a transcript is an official document from the school detailing a student's academic performance in the 4 years preceding university study. So if the student was in America, American high schools have the ability to print out such a document automatically from the school record system. However, Many British and international schools will need to create a transcript for each student. The transcript can be submitted once or can be updated throughout the year to inform US universities on the student's academic progress if any grades change. It will not include module marks. It will include official exam results and predicted grades for the current year. Don't attempt to convert GPA scores. Don't attempt to convert the scores that the student has achieved in your class to a GPA. And because this is something that each university will do by themselves on an individual basis. See if I can find a transcript template. So this is what a template for a transcript will look like. This can be found on our website under the school documents section, and you can simply download it and fill in the relevant information. So like you can see here, this is if students were sitting linear A-levels and in England only, you would use a school letterhead and then write the student's name, the student's date of birth, and then write more information about when the student attended this school. If your school ranks their students, then you can include the class rank in there, and then you can include the year 10 to 11 grade, GCSE grades, and then year 13, 12 to 13 A-level predictions, and then sort of include all the relevant information in there. Like I said, you can download this template from our website. So the school profile, unlike the transcript, the school profile is not student specific, but it is school specific. So the purpose of the school profile is to supply important contact and other basic information about the school to US universities, to provide information on the school curriculum and other options available to the student, such as IB, A-levels, hires, etc. To provide context about the school the student attends, such as where is the school located? Is it located in a big city with easy access to public transport? Can the student get there easily? Or is it in a rural area? And does the student need to travel extensively to be able to attend school? And a description of the school and the community, sort of what kind of demographic is the school, does the school contain, what kind of people live in the school or on the surrounding area of the school, as well as the school curriculum options and the student academic information, and which includes, grading scale, how does the school sort of grade their assessments, and all of that sort of relevant information. You can find more information on our website, again, under the school documents. Let's see if I can show a school profile template. So this is what the template looks like, which again can be downloaded from our website. Once again, on the school letterhead, you would include all the relevant information, including the address, the CEAD code if your school has one, the school website, description of the school and the community, which includes type of school, the mission, the accreditation, more contextual information, academics, and then grading system and distribution. So all of that you should include in a school profile, and this template can be found on our website. So how can you support your students? First of all, what we say is identify the students that are interested in studying abroad and meet with them way ahead of time. We have a timeline on our website where you can see when the students should be completing each slide of the application. So identify your students early, meet with them early, and so that you're best placed to provide guidance through the application process. Encourage the students to conduct in-depth research with an open mind, particularly where funding is a factor that needs to be considered. So if your student is perhaps looking at universities that don't provide funding for international students, then perhaps you can sort of help encourage them to keep researching more options if funding is of a particular concern to them. Make use of our website to guide you through this process. Point students in the direction of the undergraduate guide. So we've given you here, Holly has given you a little bit of an overview of what the application process will entail for the students. So you are familiar with them, and all of the information that we've provided here is also on our website. And you can access this at any point. And if you go on our website and they're going to the USA and the graduate resources for UK schools, then you will find all of the documents that we've talked about here and all of the sort of resources that we've discussed. We'll be sending out the slides and a link with this information after the webinar, so don't worry if you did not catch what I just said. And as always, if there's a question that you can't find on our website, you can always email us and we will try best to answer. So ways we can help. The SunTrust US program is a program for Year 12 students in state schools from low-income families, which allows students a chance to explore US study. So if you are currently advising any Year 12 students and you think that they might be interested in US study, then feel free to promote this program in your school. The program includes several UK residentials, as well as an all expenses paid trip to the US, where students visit US universities and get a feel of what studying in the US is like. There is an optional part 2 of the program, where students receive individual support to apply for undergraduate study in the US. And advisors would also receive individual support with this particular students. And participation in the program is free and applications are now open. You can head to the link that we're sort of highlighting in there, or you can head to our website to find out more, and applications will close in January. So if you think that any students qualify for this program, feel free to advertise it, as it's a fantastic opportunity to get to learn more about US study and get sort of help in the application process. This is a screenshot of our website, and as I was mentioning earlier, if you see on the screen, there's a section that says going to the USA. In there you can find our full undergraduate guide to US applications, and the resources for UK schools will also be under that tab. So you can advise your students to have a look at the guide in depth, and you can also have a look at the guide yourself, as well as the school documents, to obtain more information and sort of familiarize yourself with the process. We hold regular events throughout the year, and one of our biggest events is USA College Day, which happens every September, at the end of September in London. Attendance to the fair is free, but we host over 170 universities and exhibitors from the US that come to London to meet with students and to showcase our programs. So if students are doing the research and they're thinking that they wish they could find out more about a certain university, you can certainly point them towards USA College Day, where they can come and meet with the advisors. And attendee registration will open next year in late summer. Once again, we take questions by phone or email. We have an advising line, which is open Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you can call us. You can find the information on our website. And then you're also free to email us at any time. We check our advising inbox at least once a day, every day, and we try our best to respond. And so you can call us or email us and keep in touch, and we will be able to support you through every step of the process. Lastly, we hold more webinars like this, as well as seminars in Central London regularly. So keep checking out our events page for more information about future upcoming events that we will host, and that you might be able to sort of direct your students to, or that your students might be interested in attending, or you yourself are interested in attending as an advisor. So now we are going to open up the floor for questions. So we're just gonna wait a couple minutes if people have questions.
So we have a question here about students who are considering studying medicine. And so this applies to both students who are considering medicine and law. Neither of these programs are actually offered at the undergraduate level in the US. So law and medicine are like postgraduate degrees in the US. And so essentially, we often advise that if students are really set on studying medicine or law, that they really consider studying here in the UK, as it will save them a lot of time and also financially. That's a sort of tricky one. If you were to study medicine in the US, you would be expected to study an undergraduate degree first in a related field. So, for example, biology or chemistry, biomedical sciences, something like that. And then after those 4 years, you would then go to a different university or continue at that particular university to study a postgraduate qualification in medicine. So you're looking at really sort of 9 years of study, which comes along with that expense. And so for that reason, we recommend thinking about that a little bit more and what's more important to the student, studying medicine or studying in the US.
So we have a question, are you able to submit more letters of recommendation? Is there a limit? And also, could you explain a little bit about early action? So most universities will determine the number of letters of recommendations that they want you to submit, but if it also depends on where you're applying and what you are applying for, so what program you're applying for. If you are applying for an arts program, like sort of music program, they might ask for a letter of recommendation from your music teacher, as well as your other two teachers. If you're applying for sort of an athletic program, then they might ask for a letter of recommendation from your coach here. So it's very important that you go on the website on the university that you're interested in applying to, and sort of find out how many letters of recommendations they want, if there is a limit, and from whom they should be. And Holly, do you want to explain a little bit about early action?
Yeah, sure. So there are often sort of two deadlines in the US admissions process. One is early, and the other is regular. And so early applications will usually take place in sort of the November time, with regular decision taking place in January as that admissions deadline. So you'll often hear the words early decision and regular decision. Early decision is a sort of binding contract that you enter into with the university as an applicant, and that will be signed off by a parent and a school advisor. And so what this means is that when you apply early decision to a school, you will essentially say, I am going to attend this school if I am admitted. The only sort of exception to that being if you are expecting financial aid and it makes it not possible for you to attend on that basis, that you are able to kind of come out of that agreement. For early action, it's a little bit different in that it's not legally binding, and you can apply to other universities as well. But it has that same level of commitment that you're putting one school forward as you're expressing your interest, and that it is your sort of number one option of a university. We've had a couple of people asking if the webinar is being recorded. It is, and this will be sent out along with the links to the different documents and websites that we reviewed during the webinar. It looks as though a couple of people have had issues with those. I'm really sorry about that. But again, we'll be sending links to all of that in our follow-up email.
So we just had a question come in about the CEEB code. This is something that not all schools require. So it's sort of seems to be more American based, but some schools in the UK might offer it. So if your school doesn't have this code, don't worry about it.
We also had a question about whether or not it would be a good idea to include a coach if a student is applying to do a particular sports scholarship. That's definitely an option. We would definitely recommend to have at least one teacher recommendation, but if that's something that is a particularly integral part of the student's application, definitely having, you know, a sports leader or a group leader, a particular extracurricular activity is an option that students can submit as part of their application. Are there any final questions? We're conscious that it is coming up to 5:30, which is when the webinar is going to end.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much for tuning in. As I said, we're going to be sharing the slides and the recording of this webinar with everyone who has signed up to register. And as always, if you have any further questions, we'd be more than happy to take those via phone or via email. So thank you very much again, and have a great evening. Thank you. Bye.